Welcome back to On Texas Football, live edition of On Texas Football. It is our Tuesday night live stream. Amanda Atwell out this week, but I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. Yes, CJ has cried his John Mateer tears, and I'm sure there are more to come. It's a bye week for the Longhorns, but we got a lot to talk about. We will talk about that SEC schedule reveal. We'll talk about the John Mateer injury. We'll talk about what's going to happen in the SEC, what's on tap with Texas on the bye. CJ, I thought we were going to have time to maybe talk some baseball, some men's basketball, since I was with both those teams today, but we had time for none of that because we had a massive news day today, man.
Oh my goodness. Who knew we'd, wouldn't be struggling for content, on the day of or on the week of a bye, Jeff. We're sitting here loaded and yes, I'm seeing the comments. Look, I had to take one of those cry naps earlier. That's why I was off the board for a little bit. You get all kind of upset and you can't do anything. You just lay in the pillow and you end up falling asleep for a little bit. Look, that was me about an hour ago. Oh, tough news for me. My man Mateer, unfortunate, but hey, we got plenty to talk about, Jeff, and that starts with some schedules. The future of Texas football in the SEC. Let's get to it.
Yep. All right, CJ. So let's get to the three. We're not going to call them permanent opponents because those are going to be evaluated every 4 years. But the annual opponents, the three annual opponents for Texas over the next 4 years: Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Arkansas. I don't think that's a surprise at any level, CJ. And as far as I'm concerned, I think if you ask Texas fans, hey, of the SEC teams, if you're going to have three rivals you play every year, maybe you'd want to swap Arkansas out for somebody, but Arkansas wants that game as the SEC is trying to be as equitable as possible. I don't think you could ask for a better permanent, for lack of a better term, schedule than getting Texas, A&M, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, knowing you've got them each of the next 4 years.
Yeah, of course. You're not going to go a season of Texas football without Texas A&M and Oklahoma in the SEC. It just won't happen. Texas won't allow it to happen. I'm sure Oklahoma and Texas A&M feel the same way. They need this game. Texas needs this game. This is tremendous. Now, for Arkansas, hey, it's good to have them back, I guess. I don't really care for Arkansas. It's great to have them on the schedule for the Olds. I think the Olds love this game, obviously, having gone back to the Southwest Conference and even before then. But for me personally, look, they've played, about 6 times since 2004, Jeff? I mean, my lifetime, it's not a big rivalry, but I understand the hatred. I understand that there's a long-standing mutual hatred between the schools. So, look, it's fantastic. And I think the SEC got it absolutely correct for the initial 4-year opponents, annual opponents in the first 4-year pod there. Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. For Texas, they got that 100% correct.
Yeah, let's I do want, the one thing I do want to mention in there, I do like the fact that sucks for Arkansas, but such is life. Arkansas has got to make back-to-back trips to DKR this year and next year. But I like that because I like the schedule balances out. You don't have to go to Fayetteville and College Station 1 year, and then they're both home 1 year, both road the next. I like that you split them up that way. And CJ, when we talked about the SEC going to 9-game schedules, this is exactly what Chris Del Conte wanted. I believe there are 4 schools in the SEC that above everybody else really wanted a 9-game schedule, and I don't think it would surprise anybody. Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, because for those 4 schools, 4 home, 4 away, 1 neutral. Boom. Nothing really else to figure out. CJ, let's look at 2026 since that's what's going to be. The schedule's full for 2026, by the way. 7 home games for Longhorn fans. That's if you're a season ticket holder, you're getting your money's worth. Texas State, Ohio State, UTSA, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I was wondering how they were going to handle the arch dynamic with the Manning family ties, and how are you going to try to split that up over the next couple of years? You're splitting it up with your 4 away games, one of them being Tennessee, along with LSU, Missouri, Texas A&M, and obviously the OU game is the neutral site game in Dallas. CJ, I want to start, by the way, Super Chats jump to the front of the line. We'll get to as many questions as possible. KD35, I am the best. Thank you for the Super Chat. To start us off, says, LOL, OU fans crying. We got an easy 2026 schedule. Are you serious? Maybe recruit to the level we do and see how you do then on top that Ohio State at home. Yeah, CJ, I don't know how anybody in their right mind can look at a football schedule where you play Ohio State and then you go to LSU, you go to Tennessee, you go to Texas A&M, you get the OU game. I don't know how anybody in their right mind could look at that schedule and say, man, you guys got off easy on that one.
Hey, folks in Norman and folks in College Station, they'll find a way, Jeff. They'll find a way. We've heard it since Texas joined the SEC. But no, I think this slate is tremendous. And you mentioned it for fans that love going to Texas home games. Maybe you have season tickets. 2026 is unbelievable. It is an unbelievable slate of games at home. Of course, look, you get Arkansas back home. Florida returns. Ole Miss, Kiffin, and Sark back at it. That will be back in Austin. Of course, Mississippi State and, of course, Ohio State, as you mentioned earlier. That is fantastic. You get 7 true home games. Obviously, the game in Dallas against Oklahoma. But, man, those road games, if you are looking to save $1 or $2, load the car up, get the kids in the car, load the wife, and hit the road for a road trip. My goodness, there's not a better year than 2026. Going to Baton Rouge, going to Knoxville, going to Columbia. Oh, my goodness. And, of course, you get to go back to College Station, my favorite place in the world. That is an unbelievable road slate for the Texas Longhorns. I cannot wait to get out on the road. This is, the excitement level that comes with joining the SEC, and that's what Texas wanted, right? You normally, for the last 20 years, looked at a slate and said, great, we're going back to West Virginia. Oh, great. Ames, Iowa. Oh, let's see what Stillwater's got for me. Hopefully, they got some hot dogs in that stand that's been standing for 40 years, right? It just doesn't compare. And that's exactly why moving to the SEC was the right move for the Longhorns. And look, that's why it's exciting. And we'll talk about it coming up with that 27 schedule as well. But Texas has plenty of talent that will be aging correctly as they go into next year's season as well.
Has Missouri changed their god awful turf since the last time Texas was there in 2011? That's really all I care to know about Columbia. As long as they did that, whatever, play the game, it's fine. Man, I don't know, man. I've seen Missouri fans just talk like they've been this SEC power for the last 40 years or something. Like you were irrelevant most of the time. The Big 12 has been a conference, and you go to the SEC, take advantage of a down SEC East, and get to a couple championship games. But I digress. I can't wait for Texas to just beat the hell out of Missouri. That's what I'm looking forward to. But yeah, you get the trip that the pandemic robbed us of, that trip to Baton Rouge, the return game that never was in 2020, and obviously played Texas A&M. So CJ, while they were revealing the schedule, I try not to take the fine bomb bait whenever it's laid out there. But he starts off the schedule reveal show saying, hey, this is the SEC dropping the hammer and saying this is without question the toughest conference in the country. Leave no doubt. Any other conferences really outside the Big Ten, if you hope to get multiple teams into the CFP, this is going to close the door on it. CJ, I can't disagree with that, because if you have some 10-2s, maybe even some 9-3s, depending on what those 9-3s look like. Now, tell me if Texas goes 10-2 against that schedule, they don't deserve to be in the playoff.
No, 100%.
Yeah, so and you're gonna have some really, really good 9-3 teams that will have better resumes, better strength of schedules than some 10-2, 11-1 teams from the Big 12 or the ACC.
No, I couldn't agree more. And look, I think that's the big reason, obviously, for the 9-game switch for the SEC conference. But it's going to be interesting. Just how do other conferences compare? When it comes to the metrics, right? We talk about strength of schedule, strength of resume. Look, when you have Ohio State on your schedule for 2026 and then 9 other SEC opponents, I think those metrics are going to favor you in just about everything, regardless of win-loss. So for Texas, I think it's a benefit, of course, and I think it balances out very well, right? You have your 4 true away games. Those are all against very tough teams. But having the luxury of Ohio State coming to Austin, and of course 7 other games in Austin as well, it's a fine balance, Jeff. So that's what's going to be really interesting. Is again, moving forward, does the playoff expand officially? Where do things truly sit when it comes to automatic bids, automatic qualifiers? What does the SEC push for now that they're on even playing surface, quote unquote, with the Big Ten with 9 conference games?
Yeah, I look at the whole schedule for 2026 for Texas when you include the non-conference games, not just the Ohio State game. And I don't say this even in a tongue-in-cheek manner. If GJ Kinney is still at Texas State and Jeff Traylor gets a year to kind of rally the troops at UTSA, dude, there's not a Sam Houston on that schedule next year.
Yeah.
Like that's 12 regular season games where you got to show up 12 Saturdays, or maybe it's 11 Saturdays and a Friday with the A&M game, but I digress. But man, that is a really, really robust schedule. If you're a fan, you're definitely getting your money's worth. And, if you're Sark, you probably want one of those Sam Houston type games in there. But I mean, this is why, to your point earlier, CJ, this is why you joined the SEC. This is why you made the move up. This is why you're pumping all the NIL money into football that you are. This is why, Sark is taking the measures to build this program that he's taken. Like you're building a roster that has the depth to go compete against this type of schedule, and we'll see what happens. Let's go to 27, CJ, because 26 and 28, you're just flip-flopping it. So 28, LSU, Tennessee, Missouri, and A&M will be in Austin, and you'll go to, man, I'll tell you what, CJ, if you Lord willing and the creek don't rise, if all holds in 2028, you gotta go to Ole Miss. You gotta go to Oxford, man. That is, of all the places I've been to, and I've been to USC, I've been to Notre Dame, I've been to a lot of really good road trips. It didn't get better than Ole Miss. The Grove is everything it's cracked up to be. So you go to Oxford, Starkville, Gainesville, and Fayetteville in 28. 2027, Texas still needs a non-conference game. But again, CJ, you look at this home schedule for 2027. Michigan, UTEP, you need another non-conference game. Auburn, Georgia, Kentucky, Texas A&M. Look, I know Kentucky's not sexy, and neither is Vanderbilt, and to a certain extent is Mississippi State isn't either. But
neither is Auburn. I'm throwing them in there. That program stinks.
CJ, if you want to crap on Auburn, you want to crap on Hugh Freeze, I'm not going to stop you. Dude, like somebody's got to schedule these teams. Like somebody has to play Kentucky. So sorry, Kentucky fans, it is what it is, but they got to be on your schedule at some point. But CJ, you're telling me in 1 year, Texas is going to have Michigan, Auburn, Georgia, and A&M on the home schedule with OU, and then you go to Alabama, to Arkansas, to South Carolina, to Vanderbilt. Again, it's hard for me to complain about what the SEC has done here with this Texas schedule over the next 4 years.
Yeah, I'm really excited again, and I think it balances out well. You get some high-end games, and for SEC's sake, you kind of get some freebies, right? Anybody in the SEC can beat anybody. We saw that last year with Vanderbilt taking care of Alabama. But look, if you have an Alabama and a Georgia in the same year, that's a very difficult schedule, regardless of who else you play. So getting Kentucky, I think Auburn's in that conversation, but a Vanderbilt as well. I know that they probably – we'll see if Pavia tries to play for forever, Jeff. But, Vanderbilt and Kentucky, and I think, Auburn to an extent, that balances out having Georgia and Alabama in the same year. And look, I want to talk a little bit about some of these road games. Look, Texas goes to South Carolina for the first time ever. They've only played once. I believe it was 1957 back in Austin. So that's a fantastic opportunity. I loved my time in Nashville as well, getting to go see Vanderbilt in action. Now that stadium will be completely redone after the renovations in 2024. That's exciting. I think, again, and going back to Tuscaloosa, for the folks that went on that trip in 2023 when Texas walked away with a 34-24 victory in T-Town, I'm sure you are very much looking forward to getting back there and celebrating once again. And essentially the game that ended Nick Saban's tenure as the guy, right? We're gonna call it that. And of course, Fayetteville is going to be a blast on the road as well. So these road games are fantastic. As for the home games, look, Auburn comes to town, Kentucky returns, Georgia returns. I think it's exciting. And of course, anytime Texas A&M comes to town, folks are going to get up for that.
Yeah, it's important. Robbie Cole, this is important, said, wait, the A&M game is now game number 2 of SEC play. No, the dates for these, the 2026 schedule, the dates will be released in December. So this is we're just going in, I don't even think it's alphabetical, or basically it's the 3 permanent opponents first and then the rest of the schedule. So this is not the schedule in order. This is just names on a sheet of paper right now. All the dates will be sorted out at a later date. Hey, let's take a minute, CJ, just to thank our first advertiser of the evening. You see the logo up there in the right-hand corner of your screen. It's My Perfect Franchise and Andy Ludicky. Do you want control of your own destiny? Then maybe franchise ownership is right for you. If you think that could be the case, then call Andy Ludicky. He's an expert at placing people in the right franchise that fits your strength and finances. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy at 404-973-9901 or email him, Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. We want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. CJ, we got another super chat. Paxton, thank you for the super chat. It says Super League in 4 years, elite of the elite league. I mean, yeah, it's hard to argue with that. This reinforces it. I've said this the last couple of years. I really believe it this year. Now, I think this is going to be the case going forward. I don't know the next time you'll see an SEC champion finish a regular season undefeated. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't surprise me if we look up in 2027 and the number one seed in the SEC championship game has 2 losses. I just think it's too competitive a league, CJ. There's too many really good teams. And like you said, the competitive balance in the league now, hey, maybe it rotates where, that kind of bottom tier, if you will, like Kentucky and Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, if they took turns with some of the teams in the middle tier of, hey, no, we can compete and we're really good, and it kind of cycles through there. Man, this is really, we talk about it in men's basketball, we talk about it in baseball, like football is the same thing now. It's getting to that point where you really there is no off week.
No, there's not. And again, that goes to the point of having this 9-conference slate in the SEC. But no, it's tough. And the more I think about it, the more that I appreciate how many players Texas has gotten on the field over the first 4 weeks of the season, Jeff, right? What was it? The number Sark mentioned on Monday? It was 84 total
87,
players.
87, yeah.
87 total players have seen the field in some capacity. I think upwards of 23 or 24 true freshmen were on the field this past weekend against Sam Houston State as well. Getting these guys that time on the field, getting their feet wet just a little bit, that's huge. Because, again, depth is so important when your season is stretched out as long as it will be for a run at the national championship. And, of course, that's only going to get tougher next year when you replace a Sam Houston State for an Auburn, when you replace Sam Houston State for a South Carolina, teams that have NFL-level talent all over their rosters. Now you get that depth just magnified, the importance of it. And, of course, it certainly will help when you have a number of big-time recruits on campus this past weekend, seeing plenty of other freshmen seeing the field all over the field for the Longhorns. It makes such a difference to be able to sit there and say, our young talent is on the field, our young talent is in a meaningful position on the depth chart, because at some point, Texas has already seen it at the running back position. You're going to have to dig into the depths of your depth chart and make sure that you can withstand the course of your schedule.
Yeah, Paxton. So Paxton, again, thank you for the super chat. He mentions again in the chat, he's referring to like a Premier League in the future. I don't know, CJ, if we're dealing with relegation or anything like that, but I mean, I think about the 2 leagues, the 2 Premier Leagues for lack of a better term, in the country. I mean, it's the SEC and the Big Ten, and it's especially if what we're seeing in the ACC, if this is the start of kind of Clemson's downfall, the real downslide of the Dabo Swinney dynasty. Who knows what Mike Norvell and Florida State do? Yeah, and we can talk about the Big 12. I mean, maybe Texas Tech has enough. Maybe Cody Campbell's got enough NIL money to sustain it over there. But it's not like the other 2 leagues where you've got like 3 or 4 teams that should be in the national championship discussion every year.
Right. And I think that's going to be the most interesting thing is if that does end up being the case, where it moves to a 2-league, super conference, if you will. Who gets the nod, right? Do I think we all agree that a Miami, a Florida State for sure. Clemson, probably, right? I think that they've proven enough that they are in that category of nationally, relevant teams, if that makes sense. On top of that, is it North Carolina? I think both of the Virginias have fallen into obscurity when it comes to college football. I think they're both disaster programs, and evidently one of them is open after week 3. On the flip side, you look at the Big 12. Who begins to be in that conversation? Is it Texas Tech? Is it Utah? Arizona State just went to the playoff. TCU just played for a national championship a few years ago. I think it's really interesting. And I'm not sure there's a definitive answer right there, which, if that is the case, Jeff, who then decides how many schools are in each power conference? I hope that's a decision that's made way down the road, because I'm trying to enjoy this SEC schedule release and the future of Texas football in the immediate, few years. But altogether, look, man, I think this is great. And if this is the case with the SEC moving to 9 games, if that does tilt things later on in college football to the extent that you do see super conferences emerge, hey, at least we had some fun while we did, right?
Man, the only other thing I'll add to that, and I agree with everything you said, if I'm the CFP committee, I'm pretty much at the point, and I've believed this for years, you got to make Notre Dame join a conference. You want to be a part of the party. Like, you got to play by the same rules everybody else does. I get it. Like, Notre Dame is a big enough brand. It's probably, maybe you can argue maybe Texas or an Ohio State or a Michigan could do the same thing, where you're a big enough brand that you can play a national schedule and be an independent. But man, at some point, but again, like, is the ACC stable enough for Notre Dame to be a full-fledged member? Do they want that? I don't know, but I'm really close to. At the very least, I do like the fact that the committee's like, look, if you're not going to be in a conference, you don't get the bye. Like, you start. You may be good to host a first-round game every year, but you're playing a first-round game. Like, you're not getting the bye into the quarterfinals. So I do like that. At least that's the structure with the 12-team format. Now, we will go ahead. You got something, CJ?
It just makes so much sense for them to join the Big Ten. It just logistically, geographically, style of play. It is so selfish of Notre Dame to sit there and say, nope, still independent after all these years. If this is the way that we're going, with the SEC and the Big Ten having their straight shot lanes to the college football playoff, they don't deserve to be an outlier anymore. Get with the times.
Yeah, I agree. Like, they've had their chances to join the Big Ten and they haven't. So, plus, like, there's games noted, like, I know with the way that it is now, and I don't want to turn this into a Notre Dame show. God knows I don't want to do that. But, like, I need to see Notre Dame and Michigan. I need to see Notre Dame, Michigan State. And, like, you've gotten, because of realignment, you've gotten away from that. So, yeah, I want everybody, if we're going to talk about everybody breaking away, then everybody's got to be playing with the same set of rules, not just
they'll still have Notre Dame USC. So let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Most of your natural rivalries are in the Big Ten anyway. All right, let's go ahead and thank another sponsor. Let's thank the good folks over at Duck Camp. Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts to keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics, Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook them. Shop duckcamp.com today. And on Texas Football Family, if you shop at duckcamp.com, enter the code ONTEXAS25 at checkout, ONTEXAS25. That'll get you 25% off your Duck Camp purchase. So again, use that code at duckcamp.com, and thanks to Duck Camp for their sponsorship. All right, CJ, I was leaving the basketball facility today. As I said, we had a baseball availability around lunchtime, and then basketball in the afternoon. And everybody's phones are blowing up right around 3 o'clock. And everybody pretty much had the same reaction. John Mateer, hand injury against Auburn, surgery tomorrow, out for a month. Your Heisman front runner is down at this point. Who knows what that means for Oklahoma? I want to ask you this seriously, though, CJ. When you look at Oklahoma and what they're up against, they got a bye week this week, and then I think it's Kent State on the 4th, and then they've got Red River. So you're looking at Mateer missing 3, maybe 4 games. If let's say they drop 1 or 2, Mateer comes back and then they go on a run, could you hold that against OU, that if their only losses are the ones where Mateer was out? Like, we hear about that all the time with basketball, what the selection committee has to take into account. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but is this maybe some way, shape, or form something OU can work with where their season isn't just totally destroyed at this point?
Yeah, well, first off, I've not had a good day, Jeff. As you can expect, this was news I was not welcome to with much pleasure.
No,
So
keep CJ in your thoughts and prayers, by the way.
Please. But no, to your point, Mateer is the wheel that makes Oklahoma turn offensively. Without John Mateer, that is a very bad offense. It just frankly is. The offensive line is not great. The running game is horrid. In fact, I'm trying to pull up the stats now. Look, it's it is tied. I'll say it's tied right now with South Carolina with being the very worst running back run game in the entire conference. And that's not something I anticipated. They brought Jaden Ott over from California. He's basically been a grass killer on the sideline. He's done nothing this entire season. I was very surprised by that. The rest of their running backs don't necessarily inspire a lot of confidence in their ability to create after the handoff as well. Here's the statistics here. Out of the SEC conference, Jeff, so just the running backs, all of their stats accumulated and then divvied up from best to worst. Oklahoma is dead last in rushing yards, dead last in yards after contact, dead last in rush yards per game by running backs with only 71, and dead last in yards per attempt at 3.2. They're 13th, tied for 13th with only 10 missed tackles by running backs this whole season, and they're tied for 14th of runs of 10-plus yards or more with only 7 in 4 games. Look, it sounded like we were getting on to Texas for their inability to run the football. Texas is significantly better in all of these capacities than what Oklahoma is. So look, if you don't have John Mateer, a guy who was the Heisman frontrunner up until this morning, if you don't have John Mateer, the guy that is throwing for 380 yards per game, you don't have an offense. Because if it's Michael Hawkins, Jeff, we know what he looks like. And I guarantee you he's not grown into a 30-point-per-game guy over the last 10 months. It just doesn't happen like that, especially in the sense that what Oklahoma needed and how he will be handcuffed without a running game in his own right. So it's terrible for Oklahoma. It's terrible for John Mateer. But look, they're in trouble if he's not back on the field against Texas in Dallas. That's just the fact of the matter. Their wide receivers are significantly better than a year ago, but even then, I think we all watched what he was able to put on the field in Dallas a year ago saying, I don't know. I don't know if he's suited up for this position, Jeff.
So just looking at OU's schedule, they got the bye this week, Kent State at home on the 4th, then Red River. We know Mateer's not going to play either of the next 2 games. I think Pete Thamel was who reported it's roughly a month that Mateer's supposed to be out. So you assume probably the next 3 games, right? Kent State, Texas, and then at South Carolina. If they get him back, CJ, for the home game at Ole Miss, the home game against Ole Miss, I mean, not that I'm going to cry a river for OU football, but you're thinking, hey, even if you lose Red River, if you can manage to go to Columbia and beat South Carolina team, by the way, that hasn't played very well at all this year, hasn't been up to snuff. Man, you want to talk about if Arch Manning has struggled, some of these other quarterbacks struggle. Go look at Lenore Sellers' production through the first month of the season. It ain't been pretty. Nope. But you figure if you're Brent Venables, CJ, if you're like, okay, if you can basically you beat Kent State, like you should be able to roll Josh Heupel right now out there quarterback and beat Kent State. But then if you split the next 2, if you get Mateer back for Ole Miss, and then that starts the gauntlet of Ole Miss at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri at home, and then LSU at home to end the year. So it was going to be an uphill climb for them anyway. And to your point, we've seen this at Texas with a couple of quarterbacks, namely like Colt McCoy 2009 is maybe the best example. If you have an elite quarterback, he can mask a lot of deficiencies you have on him. I mean, hey, we saw Sam did the same thing during his career. And that's honestly, man, watching, because I watched most of the Michigan game and I watched a pretty good chunk of the Auburn game because it started before Texas and Sam Houston did. That's who Mateer reminds me of most. Is I watch him, I'm like, dude, he's Sam Ehlinger, but he probably has, probably the NFL might value him as a passer more than they valued Sam as a passer, but does a lot of the same things. And to your point, if you take him out, then you've got okay wide receivers. You've got a running game that's got a ton of problems. And I just don't know how. It's the same boat they were in last year. Like OU 2025 has suddenly reverted to OU 2024. As good as our defense is, I just don't know how they're going to manufacture enough points to win ball games.
Yeah,
against the better teams in this league.
Yeah, and again, go through who's after Texas there, Jeff?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. So
in
look,
Columbia.
That's a game that I think would be difficult to win. But I don't think South Carolina's done themselves any favors given what we just talked about. Their run game is just as bad as Oklahoma's, and I don't think Lenore Sellers is playing up to any of the hype as we talked about coming into the season. And Lenore Sellers is really interesting, and maybe against an Oklahoma front, he finds success. And I only say this because, look, Oklahoma swarms up front. But the only way that you can really find an ounce of what we saw from Lenore Sellers a year ago is when he doesn't play on schedule, is when he's under duress, when he's under havoc, and he just has to create because of the athlete that he is, right? You go back, Jeff, to that Texas A&M game when South Carolina walked into Kyle Field and ended up taking that game a year ago. There were plays where he was blitzed, scot-free by Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, guys running straight off the edge, and it just didn't matter. Now, he also can't throw the football this year, apparently. So what will he be able to do in that secondary, which has been pretty good so far this year for Oklahoma? My question is, I don't know. I don't know what Lenore Sellers can do. So I think Oklahoma, even with a Michael Hawkins, could walk into South Carolina and walk out with a win. But to your original question in regards to what will the committee look at when it comes to evaluating Oklahoma holistically at the end of the year, given that they don't have material for Kent State, potentially Texas, and potentially further on down the road, I think we kind of know, right? Unless they've taken a complete 180 and looked at that Florida State situation a little bit differently. That's kind of your indicator, right? I know that was at the end of the year. That kind of was more in terms of what Florida State would have done in the college football playoff. But they tell you right away, we don't really care. We're going to take the best 4. In this case, it's going to be the best 12. If Oklahoma's a part of that, they are. And if they aren't, they're not. So that's the one case I kind of look at and say, we kind of have an idea because it's not apples to apples here. But it does give a little bit of an understanding of how they value teams with and without their quarterback and what their competition levels would be regardless in a college football playoff situation.
Yeah, CJ, we'll have to leave the super chat up for a while. Mayo Corn Dog, thank you for the super chat. Says CJ's QB crush out for a month. How are you taking it? I think we can all agree CJ's had a rough day, but let's stay on this topic though. And we'll, not so much Oklahoma, but I've been just thinking about the SEC as a whole and kind of how the schedule, like who's the favorite in the SEC right now? Like who could you tell me right now is unquestionably the best team in the SEC?
I'm just going to play the trump card, Jeff. It's always there. I'm going to go with Georgia because I don't believe in LSU.
It's hard to, and I'll get to them here in a second, but you could say Tennessee, but Tennessee's played Georgia head-to-head at home and lost that game in overtime. Alabama certainly looked better than they have, than they did against Florida State in recent weeks, but like everybody in this conference has flaws. Yep. And I think what it boils down to is, at least the way I perceive the SEC teams right now, I went and looked. I just poured over a bunch of different numbers the last couple of days. And the one I settled on, CJ, I went to ESPN.com and started looking at QBR. And basically, if you look at the top half of the conference compared to the bottom half of the conference in terms of quarterbacks, that's pretty much where the separation is right now. Like the best quarterback in the SEC right now in terms of total QBR is Taylor Green. Okay, he has to be because Arkansas's defense is hot garbage. Even if they get to 30, there's no guarantee they're going to win. There will be a game in conference where they already had one with Ole Miss. Like there will be games where they score 40 and it's not going to be enough to win. Like their defense is just that bad. And Sam Pittman's dead man walking, and like we can cry for Arkansas later. Gunnar Stockton at 2. Again, didn't look great against Austin Peay, but the one game where Georgia needed him to be really good against Tennessee, he was. The Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss, Diego Pavia speaks for itself. Bo Prabula at Missouri, and Ty Simpson, Jackson Arnold at 7. Even though his pocket awareness, if you graded it on a scale of 0 to 10, it would be a potato. Like it was terrible against Oklahoma. And then Joey Aguilar at 8. Okay, let's look at the bottom half of the conference. Garrett Nussmeier, LSU still can't run the football. Marcel Reed, again, not to near to the extent Arkansas is, but it looks like CJ, there might be games where A&M's going to have to score in the 30s to win. And against Notre Dame, Marcel Reed answered the call and they were able to do it. John Mateer, we know, like, if Mateer's not running the football, like, Oklahoma's offense wasn't like elite with Mateer, and now however long they're without him, but we'll see how they do. Blake Shapen, Arch Manning, Lenora Sellers, DJ Lagway, Zach Calzada. So pretty much like the way I perceive these SEC teams is pretty much directly tied to their quarterback play. And Jerry, we're doing the watch with us during Sam Houston. Jerry made a really good point. When you look at how some of these teams are going to have to win games in the SEC, LSU is going to have to play conservative football until they can prove they can run the football and afford to let Garrett Nussmeier turn it loose. Texas, we'll see what Sark does until you get to a point where you can really trust Arch. We'll see what the Texas offense looks like. Mississippi State, we'll see how long they can keep it going. You said Lenora Sellers isn't playing very well. It seems like DJ Lagway's got an injury every other week. Even, Marcel Reed has, you could argue, the best single game performance, the most important single game performance any SEC quarterback has had this year with what he did against Notre Dame. Okay, can he put it together over multiple weeks now? Yeah. Can he string together some good games? So I don't know. I feel like we're going to look up, and whoever's in the it's a shocker, I know, but we'll look up whoever's in the SEC championship game. It'll be the two teams that get the most consistent quarterback play, because there's, I saw Bobby Petronik and some other people talking about it, and this is really what got me started down this road, CJ. Auburn's got a really good defensive front. Alabama's getting better. We know what Georgia, even though it's not what it's been the last few years, it's still Kirby Smart in defense. They're figuring it out. We know the Texas defense is elite. Oklahoma's defensive front is about as good as anybody in the country. Everybody's got really good fronts. It's just who's going to have this quarterback. And Hefty Taco mentions it. I'll just throw it out there. It's not insane to think Diego Pavia can get Vanderbilt like into the month of November, where you're looking at it and be like, hey, they've got a shot, like they're alive.
Ooh, I don't think I'm ready. I don't think the SEC is ready for a possibility of Vanderbilt being in the conversation for an SEC championship berth.
I have a ton of respect for Clark Lee and what they've done there. And you know what? This is what worries me about, like, when Vanderbilt comes to Austin. I'm more worried about that game than I am right now, probably than I'm worried about OU or Florida. Because number one, you got a veteran quarterback who can ad-lib after the play. And two, Vanderbilt, that Clark Lee coach team, they're not going to beat themselves. They're not going to turn the ball over. They're not going to commit a bunch of penalties. And as sloppy as we've seen Texas be, that's a game where if Vanderbilt's just that much cleaner than you, it wouldn't shock me if Vanderbilt won that game.
Yeah. I'm looking at their schedule now. They have to play in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. They get LSU at home, Missouri at home. They come to Austin the week after that. That is 4 consecutive top 20 opponents in the SEC. On top of that, they still have to go to Knoxville the final week of the season too. So that's a tough slate, but I'm with you. I do look at Vanderbilt obviously much different than I would have coming into the SEC, because of the quarterback. And to your point, going back to that conversation about the quarterbacks, that is your identity for the most part offensively. I think maybe the one guy that you can look at and say, I don't know if he is the ultimate engine that makes that offense run, is Bo Pribula. And he's been very good.
Yeah.
And I say that because, look, the second leading, there are only 2 teams in all of the SEC with running back rush totals over 650. Tennessee has 811. It's pretty good. Missouri's at 1,043. They are dominating on the up front. Ahmad Hardy has more missed tackles forced by himself than probably 75% of all of the SEC schools right now in their entire running back committee. So they really run the ball very well. I think, again, Tennessee does as well. But the ultimate ceiling of a team, and this is how the game of football has been played for the last name a year. How good is your quarterback? Can he alleviate all of the issues on your offense and mask a lot of those on your defense and ultimately carry you to where you want to go. You look at the number of, Heisman winners that we've seen since 2010, basically. Cam Newton, Johnny Manziel, you go down the list, Marcus Mariota, Jameis, and then Joe Burrow, plenty of other guys. How many, Jeff, would you say were the exact reason why their team made it as far as they did? Probably all of them.
Yeah.
And how many right now can you look at in the SEC and say, I could see that quarterback taking my team to a SEC championship and deep into the college football playoff based off of what we just talked about? I need to see it a little bit more from Arch before I get on that boat. I haven't seen it at all from Garrett Nussmeier. Haven't seen it at all from Lenore Sellers. Obviously, John Mateer's dinged up. Marcel Reed, maybe. But look, for all the hype that he's gotten after that Notre Dame game, I think folks forget that he threw 17 for 37 in that game. That's great. He got the ball to his guys just enough, and they created for him afterwards. Still wasn't a clean operation throwing the football for Marcel Reed. There are plenty of questions for Texas A&M, who's also a bottom 4 team, running the football as well, when that was the expected strength for them coming into the season. So, no, I don't think you can look at a number of these schools right now and say the engine that makes that team start up and run faster than everybody else is their quarterback. Maybe Gunnar Stockton, based off of what I've seen this year. And you mentioned Austin Peay wasn't a great game. That was an ugly condition game. I think it was wet. There was a delay,
like an hour and a half, like a 90-minute lightning delay or something too.
Yeah, it was a funky game. So I'll give him a bit of a bit of a slide for that. But look, I saw him walk in Knoxville, Tennessee, and come away with a come from behind victory in which he had to go down the field and score in regulation and then score again in overtime. That's not an easy thing to do on the road in a heated rivalry game like that. So I'll probably put him at that top spot, but that's, again, not what I was expecting. And I just don't think Diego Pavia has enough juice around him. I also think, as well as Trinidad Chambliss is playing, is he the guy that Ole Miss will rely on when Austin Simmons returns? Also, does it even matter? Because that is a soft-ass program. I'll just put it right out there. That program is very soft on the defensive front. It's very soft up front in both trenches, and it should have been in the SEC championship game a year ago, except you lose to Kentucky. They're good for a loss like that every single year because that's who that program is, and that's kind of what Lane Kiffin has always been, is a slip-up one time every single year, Jeff.
And that'll get me to my next point. Actually, you know what? Let me hold off on that. Let's go ahead and I do want to thank another sponsor. Let's go ahead and thank Mark Saunders at Allstate. When it comes to protecting all of your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some good news. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you need. Everything from your home, your car, your boat, your motorcycle, RV, ATV. If you're looking for someone local to the Austin Round Rock area, give Mark a call at 512-218-8571. Again, 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you will be with Texas alum Mark Saunders. And again, thanks to Mark for his sponsorship. It was great to meet Mark when we had our on Texas football. We partnered with Third and Longhorn for the meet and greet tour, speaking tour, show tour around the state. It was really good to meet Mark at the Austin meetup. CJ, where I was going with that, I go back to anytime you get to the thick of a conference race and you got these games where you start to break it down, you're like, man, what is going to make the difference? I go back to our guy, Rod Babers. And one thing Rod told me a long time ago that I try to go back to, always fall back on it. Do you trust the coach and do you trust the quarterback? And what you just said about Lane Kiffin, that's why I don't entirely trust Lane Kiffin, because it seems like they're good for one of those losses. Do I trust Mike Elko? It's not Mike Elko as much as it's Texas A&M. Like
it's Colin Klein. Do you trust Colin Klein?
I don't know that I do. Not, at least not yet. I mean, the Notre Dame game was great for them. There's no question. Like, you can't sugarcoat it. But why should I trust Texas A&M in the month of November to win football games of any level of consequence? Why should I? Because history says they're going to lose it. Yeah. Ryan Nelson, I saw mentioned earlier, what do I have against Missouri? I don't have anything against Missouri. Drink has grown on me. I'll say that. My dislike for Missouri goes back to, I don't have a very high opinion of Gary Pinkel. Didn't have a very high opinion of his coaching staff. Fozzie Whitaker lost millions of dollars in an NFL career, even though Fozzie still did make the NFL, like god-awful turf in Missouri. Ended Henry Josie's career, your own running back. So It just goes back to the Gary Pickle stuff. It's not like drink really has grown on me, but that's where I'm at.
25-5 in the last 3. I mean,
and you know what? We've been talking about, man. They've got NIL money.
Yep.
And they've been willing to spend it. Like, honestly, man, like Ryan Wingo is at Texas, but Missouri would have done whatever it took financially to get Ryan Wingo to go to Missouri.
Well, I look at Caden Green. We talked about that running game. Missouri being able to lure Caden Green into the portal out of Oklahoma, a 5-star freshman that started for the Sooners in 2023 and then transferred to Missouri. They don't lead the SEC in rushing yards. They're not a top 5 rushing team without Caden Green. That's a big part of their personality as a football team, Jeff. But I'm with you. I think Drink is a great coach. I think they also have the right idea when it comes to talent assimilation. It makes sense.
Drink needs to stay at Missouri for the same reason. Like if I'm Kurt Signetti, I don't entertain Florida or any of those other jobs that are going to come open. Missouri is a perfect place for Drink. Like he can go 8-4 there, and he's fine. And being kind of quirky and Drink being Drink, like it can work in Missouri. I don't know if it will work at Florida. I don't know if that would fly at like a blue blood program. Just like Kurt Signetti, it's great for Indiana. You can play up the underdog role at Indiana all you want. I don't know that you can do that at Florida for the same reason. Like there's some coaches that work at Texas. There's some guys that won't work at Texas.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like hindsight is 2020 now. Tom Herman was a much better fit for a place like Houston where you can play up the underdog card. Really hard to play up the fact that you're the underdog when you're at the University of Texas. Like it's just really hard to do that.
Which makes what Kirby Smart has done so much more impressive because every year we've looked at Georgia and their guys are saying no one believes in us. It's like, well, I don't know. The team with 20 defensive 5-stars in their front 7 is saying that no one's believed in them all year. I'm with you, Jeff. You need a certain kind of coach, and that's something I think Texas has found. I do think Sark is a guy that can get them over the hump. Obviously, we've seen it very close over the last 2 years. Can he be the reason as a play caller, as a head coach, as a motivator that Texas ascends into that upper echelon of national championship level status? I think he'll prove some folks wrong in that capacity.
Yeah. But you start looking in this conference, like which coaches do you trust? Obviously, I trust Kirby because if there's one coach in college football right now in a post-Nick Saban world, I got to have one game for the fate of the planet to win. Who am I getting to coach? I'm calling Kirby Smart to get my team ready for it. I trust Clark Lee, and and that's why I was talking about Vanderbilt. Like of all these combinations, like I feel like I trust Garrett Nussmeier maybe more than I trust Brian Kelly, even though Brian Kelly is a really good football coach. It's just personal for me. Mike Elko, Marcel Reed, we'll see. I trust Sark. I don't have a reason yet to really trust Arch to put it together for a whole season. We'll see. I'm hopeful. I haven't given up on Arch by any stretch, but the proof will be in the pudding. CJ, maybe the coach I trust the most and the quarterback I trust the most, maybe the combo I do is Diego Pavia and Clark Lee, and that is completely wild and asinine for me to say, but I may trust that slightly over the combo of Gunnar Stockton and Kirby Smart. I know that's wild, but I have that much respect for Clark Lee and dude, Diego Pavia just balls, man.
Yeah, he does. And it's tough to root against a guy like that. It's hard to bet against him, in that sense as well. But that's, again, as SEC play ramps up, which quarterback ascends with their play as the competition level does.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of room across the conference, as we just talked about, for a lot of these guys to grow. And as a result, their team will as well. Right now, I think with it being the bye week, Jeff, I think we just came up with a video idea. Hey, tune in for Friday, Jeff, because you and I think we're going to do a video on this very topic. Do I believe in your quarterback and your head coach to get you to where you want to go? Because there's some interesting combinations in there. Do I believe in Garrett Nussmeier through 4 weeks? Probably not. Do I believe in Brian Kelly? Definitely not. But I do think the ceiling for where Nussmeier could be and where that LSU offense could be is not even close to the level of which they're playing at right now. So plenty of room to go all the way through. Jeff, here's a question for you. Diego Pavia or Taylon Green? This comes from Paxton. Paxton, thank you very much for the super chat. I got something to say right after you, so go ahead.
Yeah, but see, I got to look at the combo, right? And it comes down to, okay, who do I trust more, Sam Pittman or Clark Lee? Like, it's not even a question I'm going to entertain answering because the answer is pretty obvious. I know I'm pumping up Vanderbilt right now, but like my thing with Vanderbilt is, once you get into the thick of your schedule, are you going to have the depth to maintain? And I don't know that Vanderbilt CJ will ever have the kind of depth they need to make it through an SEC schedule. I mean, it just is what it is. But it's fun. I like the fact that we're talking about Vanderbilt being relevant. I love that. I don't know, man. It seems like Taylon Green is getting to the point where the baseline is being raised. Like his floor is upping a little bit. But man, CJ, I just go back to last year and man, there were some games Taylon Green won for Arkansas. There were some games where he cost Arkansas some games last year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that will always be a part of his game. You get kind of a reckless abandonment with the football at times, right? There's going to be an errant pass or 5 that could be picked off. That's just who he is. He's been playing tremendous. I think he's a great talent, Jeff. Yeah. I do. I think, again, you look back at that Ole Miss game, they dropped 35 on the road at Ole Miss. He goes for 115 on the ground with 14 carries, and he throws for 305. Like that, you don't see that stat line outside of maybe 5 or 6 guys in the entire country. That's a tremendous stat line. And he's been hamstrung just a little bit in the 2 losses, right? It wasn't necessarily his fault late in the game, right? He has a wide receiver fumble against Ole Miss. He has a running back fumble against Memphis. Yet, in the build up to those moments, there are times, especially against Memphis, where you look at Taylon Green, you say, we need better play. This game should not be as close as it was. If you go back, Arkansas led 28-10 on the road in Memphis, and they end up losing 32-31 because that offense just hits a wall. It hits spurts of just nothing. And again, that just can't be what Arkansas relies on in conference play if they want to get into this conversation. But to your point, Pittman, I don't know. Taylon Green, however, individually, I do believe he is one of the top 5-6 quarterbacks in the entire conference, 100%.
I feel like, and I don't want to say I'm noticing a trend, but I'm just thinking like post Joe Burrow 2019, if you look at the quarterbacks, CJ, that have won national championships, you got Mac Jones, Stetson Bennett, J.J. McCarthy, Will Howard. I mean, I know J.J. McCarthy got drafted in the first round, but all those guys, like, their coach, and granted, the team Mac Jones was on at Sark was the OC for Bama was so freaking talented. Like, you didn't have to try. I mean, you didn't have to force the issue. The game wasn't on your shoulders. You just execute, do your job. It's going to be there. But it's almost like, hey, I don't want to say you're better off getting a quarterback that's just not going to screw it up, but that's not a bad. I mean, it shows you the tried and true formula of, hey, let's play really good defense. Let's run the football. And let's have a quarterback that makes really good decisions in crunch time and takes care of the football. I don't care what area you're in, man. That wins you a lot of games.
Yeah. Now, can I put you on the spot here? I want to spin this back to Texas.
Okay.
How close are you, or do you already believe that Texas has a winning combination of quarterback and head coach?
I think they have a winning combination. They have a championship level combination. I don't know. I've gotten to the point where I trust Sark, like you said, for the exact opposite reason. We talk about Lane Kiffin, like it's, Sark hasn't had one of those losses. I mean, what was the last loss? Like maybe the Tech loss in 22 was the last one Sark lost. Like, man, they had no business losing that game, and I don't know how they lost it. Oklahoma State, I'll even write that off because Quinn had slammed his hand in the car door or whatever and was 19 for 49 in the wind, and he's throwing a Worthy who had one good hand. Like it was a recipe for disaster in hindsight. But I trust Sark. I trust Arch. I'm very hopeful for Arch. Like I saw enough positive signs against Sam Houston. And again, I know it was against Sam Houston, but the fact that like, hey, just flush the 3 games before that, get you one good one, get you the slump buster, go into the bye week feeling good. So I feel like it was a good way for Arch to end non-conference. So I'm hopeful. Is Arch going to be a guy is he going to be 2019 Joe Burrow, 2010 Cam Newton, where he carries you to a national title? Definitely not ready to go there, but I feel like CJ, maybe if you ask me a percentage scale, like I'm probably 70% of the way there to having 100% trust in that combo.
And I think that's come a long way from the early non-conference dip that we're talking about as well.
Yeah.
I'm with you. And again, it's all about steps moving in the right direction. This bye week, hopefully that confidence grows. We got one more, Jeff, coming from Paxton. One more from me. Mateer flying to LA means it's bad. I think more than that is just seeing a hand specialist, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. But look, again, hand injuries on your throwing hand, I don't think that's an injury I would want to sit around and have my quarterback dealing with at any point in the middle of a season.
No, and it's unfortunate for Brent Venables because your job is on the line. But for John Mateer's football future, like you know, if you've got any modicum of character about you do the right thing by the kid.
Yeah.
So not that John Mateer's a kid, he's a grown man, but I think everybody gets what I'm saying. All right, one more time as we start to wind it down. Let's go ahead and thank Andy Ludicky in My Perfect Franchise. Do you want control over your own destiny? Then maybe franchise ownership is right for you. If you think that could be the case, then call Andy Ludicky at 404-973-9901. Again, that's 404-973-9901. He's an expert at placing people in the right franchise that fits your strengths and finances. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your own destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, thank you to Andy Ludicky for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here in All Texas Football. CJ, we'll be back tomorrow. Again, the guys on Coffee and Football, they'll be talking about the John Mateer injury. They'll be talking about the SEC schedule reveal. Maybe Blake could even force Bobby and Jerry to talk a little baseball since we met with the baseball team today. One baseball tidbit that I do want to get to, though, real quick, because I think it's worth mentioning. Jim Schlossnagle said today Dylan Volantis won't pitch competitively this fall. So the exhibition against Texas Tech on Saturday and then the following Friday against Lamar at home. Had a bout with mono late in the summer. So basically they've told him, hey, just get your strength back, get your stamina back, and, we'll ramp you back up, work on just developing your craft and get you back ready. He's going to compete for a spot in the rotation once they get to
that's your Friday night guy.
Should be. I hope so.
I think it's that easy.
Yeah. Schloss is really optimistic, too, about getting that core of Luke Harrison, Ruger Riojas, and Max Grubbs, getting those three guys back. They've recruited the portal really well. They've recruited the high school ranks really well. So we'll see what it looks like. But yeah, no Dylan Volantis. But I tell you this, man, Carson Tenney, I had not seen him in person until today.
Big kid.
He's listed at 6'4", 235. Yeah. I think the Texas staff would probably, PK would probably go over there and be like, dude, you want to come play some edge for me? Carson Tenney's a very large man and is ready to hit tanks out of Dish Falk. So
I'm ready to see it.
I'm always looking forward to some Longhorn baseball. I'm looking forward to some Longhorn baseball this year. All right, CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our sponsors, Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise, Mark Saunders Allstate, and Duck Camp for sponsoring the show tonight. If you're not a member, over to ontexasfootball.com. Get over to the site right now. Sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing a minute of information, opinions, analysis on the Longhorns throughout the 2025 season. And again, if you've got questions or anything else, direct them to guys at Coffee and Football tomorrow. Also, one more note from a sponsorship point. If you shop at Duck Camp, go to duckcamp.com to get your gear. Use the promo code ONTexas25. ONTexas25. That'll get you 25% off your purchase at Duck Camp. CJ will finish crying tears for John Mateer, and we will see you tomorrow night for the Wednesday live stream. For CJ, for Matthew, for the On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Until tomorrow night, welcome.
Happy Tuesday.